Well, a very happy 4th of July weekend to everybody. I'm glad y'all are in town and decided to show up for Dawn Mountain, despite it being a holiday weekend. For those of y'all who don't know me, I'm Claire. I'm the programs manager here at Dawn Mountain. And because Ann and Harvey are out of town, I'm like their substitute teacher. I'm like their grad student. Thank you. So this is a First Sunday talk. It's just a short talk on a relevant topic. And last time, Ann and Harvey talked about relaxation, sort of the Buddha's guide to relaxation. And so I've been thinking about, well, those of y'all who know me, which is like almost all of you, you know that I'm just back from retreat. And for me, one of the big things that I was kind of like doing and realizing was just how much anxiety I just kind of carry around with me all the time. And so for me, one of the really nice counters to that kind of like anxious feeling is a sense of like joy and gratitude. So this morning, kind of following up on the theme of relaxation in a way, I wanted to actually talk about joy. And those of y'all who are familiar with Buddhist descriptions of loving kindness, you know that there are 4, they're called like the divine abidings or the boundless states. So there's love, compassion, joy, and equanimity. And we tend to talk a lot about love and compassion because they're so important. But I think we often don't talk enough about joy and equanimity. So I wanted to talk about joy today. And really, equanimity is kind of the foundation of everything that we do. But by Jove, joy doesn't get enough press. So I wanted to talk about it. So these 4 boundless states, you know, they're ideally cultivated with an open heart so that they're boundless to ourselves in whatever condition we're in. You know, it can offer ourselves compassion no matter what, love no matter what. And they're also boundless in terms of sending that out to everyone else too. So this boundless state of joy is traditionally talked about as an antidote to jealousy. And of course, it's great for that, you know. So it's often called sympathetic joy when you read traditional texts on these 4 states. And the idea is when someone else has something good that happens to them, that you rejoice for them instead of thinking like, that should have gone to me, or like, man, you got a really nice new car, and I'm really jealous. Harvey likes to talk about this. I hope your car gets scratched. You know, like that kind of just nasty, like totally not politically correct feeling. This idea of sympathetic joy is a great counter to that. Like, oh, wow, I feel in myself some jealousy here. Okay, is there anything I can do to cultivate a positive state of mind toward this person and be happy for them? So I think of that as kind of like sympathetic joy turned outward. But I think in our culture, somehow we have this real joy deficit. So I think it's really helpful also to use joy turned inward toward ourselves. So I want to talk about it this morning, really in the context of 2 different ways that I've tried using it in my practice and in daily life. So I hope that one of them, or maybe even both of them, will be helpful to y'all in your practice in your daily life. And so the first way that I wanted to talk about joy is actually kind of based on the book The Buddha's Brain by Rick Hanson. And he has a really interesting, I think it's most of a whole chapter, discussion of what he calls the negativity bias. And it turns out that our brains, for good evolutionary reasons, but like not very good mental well-being reasons, our brains are really attuned to negative stuff in our environment. So something rustles in the bushes and we immediately go to saber-toothed tiger. And that's good for keeping us alive, you know, on the plains of Africa 10,000 years ago. But nowadays, the equivalent of a rustle in the bushes can just set us off into a lot of anxiety. We can have a lot of, I'm sure everybody knows this, I'm just saying it out loud, you know, a lot of physical symptoms. And it just depletes our well-being and our mental state of peace and joy that we could otherwise be experiencing. So this negativity bias means that when we encounter a situation, even an internal situation, even a thought pattern that we consider negative or that somehow has something that's threatening to us, our neurons immediately start to make connections around that. it's almost immediate. As soon as we think that thought, it sort of begins to shape even our brains in a certain way. But here's the really crazy part. When we have a positive experience, that doesn't happen. So research has shown that with a positive experience, to really take in an experience of, appreciation or calm and peace, something like that, you actually need to hold it in your mind for about 10 seconds before your neurons will begin to respond to it physically in the way that they would respond to something negative. So that's where meditation comes in. So we can know and acknowledge that we have this negativity bias, and that it's not that like you're a negative person, it's that our brains are actually designed to be this way so we didn't get eaten by saber-toothed tigers. But now, well, okay, there's still Houston traffic. I was going to say now saber-toothed tigers are not a threat. Most of what we face is not like an existential threat. There's traffic, but most of the things we actually get stressed out about are not they're not the category of threat that our brains were actually designed to respond to. So it's really helpful to do these meditations, for instance, on these 4 boundless states: love, compassion, joy, equanimity, and to actually intentionally feel what that feels like in your body, feel what it feels like in your mind, and allow yourself to take it in. So my cunning plan was to have a short, 5-minute meditation already posted today on Dawn Mountain's podcast page that would be about taking in joy, and just a little guided meditation on really holding that for that 10-second period, and trying to accept these states within ourselves, and just to imagine that beginning to reshape the way that our physical body responds to stress. But I haven't actually done that yet, so it should be up either this afternoon or tomorrow. No, tomorrow's 4th of July. Yeah, I'll do it tomorrow. I have a day off. This is what I do on my days off. So anyway, even a very short meditation, little 5-minute meditation, that's got plenty of 10-second segments in it. So these ways of working with our mind and actually also working with our brain can be really powerful. It's just we have to know, first of all, that we have a negativity bias. We have to know, there's a practice that I can do to help to counteract that. There are states of mind, there are, ways of cultivating these states of mind that people have been practicing for centuries, and a combination of that practice and modern neuroscience can actually give us a big leg up on reshaping the way that we respond instinctively to our situations. So that's the first thing that I wanted to say about joy and the ways that we can kind of use this practice of feeling joy within ourselves as a counter to this sort of joy deficit that we tend to run. And the other thing that I wanted to say about joy is that, and this one is more inspired by Brené Brown and her wonderful writing on shame. She really writes about, shame as all these sort of patterns and ways of thinking and ways of feeling that get in the way of connection. And one of the things that she writes about is our sense of not enough. And I know I've talked about this before, but it's kind of a theme for me personally, so I'm sorry y'all have to hear it again, or get to hear it again or something. So she really writes about, we wake up first thing in the morning and we already feel like we're not enough. I didn't get enough sleep. Oh my gosh, I hardly have enough time to get to work. There's just such a pervasive sense of not enough time, I'm inadequate, I won't be able to do this job well enough, whatever it is. There's just almost like a background hum of this not enough, not enough. And really, she doesn't necessarily say this in her book, but I think just looking around, it's such a consumer culture here. We're conditioned to think that, if I'm going to sell you a product, I need to convince you first that you need it. Oh, you're so inadequate. How about some Listerine? That'll help. You're much too fat. How about if you try my new diet product? That'll help. So we always have this sense of like, I'm almost there, but not quite. And to me, joy, this cultivation of joy, can be one of the most powerful ways of counteracting that. And so I was looking at our podcast stream. If you're not familiar with Dawn Mountain's podcast episode, or if you haven't already been cornered by me and told about it about 15 times, we have a podcast. and it's really great. It contains, segments from our teachers, Ann and Harvey, from their meditations that they've presented on Teaching Tuesday series. And the last one, the most recent one that was posted, is Anne doing a meditation of a golden orb of light that kind of draws down supportive energy into us. So it's really great. I highly recommend checking it out in the context of joy. And if you haven't already subscribed to our podcast, I also recommend that, and also liking us on Facebook and following us on YouTube. So there's many great resources. That has been my advertisement for Dawn Mountain Online. But basically, I think joy, to me, there's a quality of tightness that comes with anxiety, that comes with the sense of like not enough, like, oh, I have to get, I have to do these 15 things, and I have to do them in the next hour. There's just this like certain tightness that comes with that anxiety. And so what's really nice is to practice something like that golden orb meditation and imagining the orb sending out beams of light all throughout the universe, bringing all of the joy that you might have lost as a child, all of the joy that anyone has ever experienced. It's like you're able to experience that, and this orb just sends down this sort of stream of nectar. And to me, that's a really wonderful way of actually helping to counteract this sense of like tight clinginess. In Buddhism, often people who are like a little bit familiar with it, but not that familiar, they hear this word craving and grasping, and they think like, oh, well, I shouldn't grasp at anything. But to me, the idea of, craving, so the second noble truth, if y'all are familiar with that, is there's a cause of suffering, and that is grasping. But I don't think that, to me, it's very clear when I meditate that there's a certain grasping onto that happens, not in a healthy way. This is not like, oh, I shouldn't feel affection for my family. Sometimes people kind of go to that unhealthy place when they hear this idea of like not grasping onto things. But I think this sense of grasping really is more a sense of like, I'm not enough, and it keeps us very self-centered somehow. I have to have this. I'm not able to cope with the world. And joy is such an expansive, outward-focused thing to me. This is how it feels to me. So I don't know if this resonates with you. But really being able to take in joy and to feel, there's something about joy that just kind of expands your heart. And so I haven't really defined joy, but when I say it, I don't mean that sense of like giddiness or like, this is great, something wonderful has happened. I mean a sense of like this deep, very grounded, but at the same time lively, heart-opening kind of feeling. The feeling that you get when you're, maybe out hiking and you see the sun setting and it's just beautiful and your heart is open. So to kind of pull these two strands together, this strand of the negativity bias that we want to counter with meditation, and then this strand of this sort of background sense of just not enough, never enough, it can be really powerful. Hey, Scott. To be aware of that sense of that not enough, that sort of constricted, grasping, not enough sense. And when you feel it, to actually intentionally think, oh, wow, this is a great moment to cultivate joy. Whatever sense you have of an orb or any kind of higher power that you can call on, to bring that right into your heart center and let the joy flow out from there. And then to acknowledge, to feel, oh, okay, I'm going to sit with this for 10 seconds. I'm going to take it in. I'm going to let it become part of me. They can be a really powerful practice to kind of weave these two together. So that's most of what I wanted to say about joy, and we're almost out of time. But we have a few minutes. So does anyone have reflections that you would like to share, or questions or comments?
Just if I could ask you to speak briefly on the idea of having something that at first seemed extremely negative in your life, and the process it might take joy for that. Is there a process for that?
What I've found is that, for instance, in the course of, a longer retreat or something. Sometimes you deal with the surface issues and then these bigger things come up. And it's sometimes easier, I think, to start with the smaller things. And I also don't want to be a Pollyanna here. I think it's not necessarily that the things in your life that are bad that you can make them good. But I think what you can do is to have a larger sense of perspective, that thing in your life isn't it doesn't take up all the oxygen. So, I mean, it can actually be helpful, I think, once you're in a nice settled state. So this might not be like the 5-minute meditation on joy, but this might be like, the 30-minute meditation on joy. But once you're already in a calm, settled state, then you might actually, do a little practice on joy, try to bring that up. And it's really helpful to me anyway, to have a sense of some supportive, ball of light, or if you have a belief in a divine being, you can, imagine them there ready to help you. So this ball of light has either sent out its beams and really charged itself up with this energy of joy and it's ready to help you, or you have a sense of a being who's going to help you. And once you have that, then you might bring up intentionally a situation where you just felt so constricted and, completely that joy deficit, and into that physical sense of what you're feeling, that you can invite that. And then it might not actually make it okay, but it might give you more resources to hold a bigger space around it. And you mentioned gratitude, and if we'd had more time, I was going to say something more about that. But I find that often, again, this negativity bias can come into play where there's this situation and it kind of wraps up your resources trying to fix that. And it's hard to feel gratitude for everything else that's going well, So I think intentionally finding things. I mean, my water bottle, it's purple. It makes me happy to look at it. So it's really simple, but to find something, any excuse basically, to cultivate that opening, and not because the other people in your life necessarily deserve it, but because you deserve it. To get a little bit Buddhist here, the idea is that each of us actually has Buddha nature. So this tight, tense, anxious version of ourselves is actually less true than the joyful one. So, the idea with all 4 of these boundless states of the heart is that you're poking holes in what we think is real, so we can kind of get a little glimpse of this big, vast blue sky. I was listening to Pema Chodron's teaching, and she keeps coming back to this vast blue sky, which is actually a much more accurate representation of who we are. So I think really, this cultivation of joy isn't so much about putting a nice shine on a crappy situation as about recognizing, oh, right, I am the vast blue sky. And this is a crappy cloud, but it doesn't define the sky, if that makes any sense.
A better answer than I was hoping for. Thank you.
Oh, you're most welcome. And sadly, we're out of time now. But if anybody wants to continue the conversation, we have approximately 5 minutes until meditation, and then we have a break. So thank you for coming, and see you again in about 5 minutes.